Welcome. There is room here. It is an honor to be on the Treaty 6 traditional territories and also the homeland of the Métis people. Merci à Nate de l'accueil très chaleureux aujourd'hui. Thank you to Nate for the warm welcome here at the Productivity Innovation Center. It is an honor to be here in my riding of Edmonton Centre for this important announcement regarding the Government of Canada's investment in Canada's energy sector. We know that Edmontonians and Albertans are struggling. We feel that pain. My colleagues and I in government are working every day to make things better for Albertans. We are proud of Canada's energy sector and the hard-working men and women in the energy industry. Nous sommes très fiers du secteur énergétique ici au Canada et toutes les personnes qui travaillent dans l'industrie. Afin de commencer cette annonce aujourd'hui, j'aimerais présenter un ami à l'Alberta et un champion de la diversification économique. It is now my honor to introduce to you my friend and colleague, a friend to Albertans, the Member of Parliament for Winnipeg South Centre, the Minister of International Trade Diversification, the Honourable Jim Carr.
Good morning, everyone. It's always good to be in Edmonton. I was here only a few weeks ago with some good news on trade diversification. I have close family here, so it's always a pleasure for me to be in this great city. And I, too, want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of Treaty 6 and the home of the Métis people. If I had to pick just one thing I took away from my time as the Minister of Natural Resources, it would be this. Alberta and its resource sectors are uniquely and ideally positioned to lead the global transition to a sustainable energy future. And the reason is simple. We have a natural advantage that few, if any, other countries can claim. It's not just that Alberta that has an abundance of the natural resources the world needs, it's that Albertans and all Canadians have the ingenuity, the know-how, and the experience to develop our vast resources sustainably and competitively. I used to say it all the time about the oil sands. No one had figured out how to get oil out of the oil sands until Canadians found the way. Now we see Albertans right here applying that same innovation to enhancing the oil and gas sector's environmental performance. That natural advantage has been invaluable to me in my new role as the Minister responsible for expanding Canada's global markets and for diversification. We are not just the sum of our vast resources, we are the sum of them plus our talent, our openness to the world, and the access through our diversification strategy that we now have to it. And the world is increasingly looking for resources that are produced sustainably and responsibly, securely and reliably. And that is our edge. Our government is building on this natural advantage. We have made an historic push to make Canada the most globally connected economy on earth, and our trade deals across Europe, our own hemisphere, and now the Pacific are testament to that effort. Energy played a major role in each of those negotiations. We made sure of that. In the new free trade agreement with the United States and Mexico, there are major gains for Canada's energy sector. There is now a new side agreement on energy with the United States and the elimination of administration fees that will save Canada's oil patch more than $60 million a year. We also delivered a fall economic statement last month that focuses on tax changes, incentives, and investments that would enhance Alberta and the rest of Canada's competitiveness and promote business confidence. This includes new measures to allow business to immediately write off the full cost of machinery and equipment used in the manufacturing and processing of such things as oil and gas. And we've announced changes that would dramatically improve our regulatory competitiveness. All of the same things that Canada's energy producers had told us were essential to their long-term future. And today, our government is taking the critical next step with new measures to protect and promote Canada's natural advantage. Measures that reflect our belief that Alberta's energy sector is not just the historic backbone of our economy, but a key part of our country's future. That the jobs this sector produces must be protected, and they will be. that the workers in this sector are valued parts of our national economy and critical to its longer-term success. And that's why I'm pleased to be sharing this day with my friend and colleague, the Honourable Amarjeet Sohi, as we unveil new investments to protect workers and assist Canada's oil and gas industry during this challenging time. So please, join me in welcoming Canada's Minister of Natural Resources, the Honourable Amarjeet Sohi.
Well, thank you, Jim, and thank you, Randy. Good morning, everyone. I also want to start by acknowledging that we are gathered here on Treaty 6 territory. And with the exception of Canada's First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, all of us have come to this land from somewhere else. And all of us have been able to build our lives and the lives of our families, for which we are grateful. Canada's energy sector, including Alberta's oil and gas industry, has been a source of well-paying middle-class jobs for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. Every community and every province has benefited from this prosperity. Our government always has and always will stand with the energy sector and the hard-working Canadians who work in this sector. When I was elected as a Member of Parliament for Edmonton Millwoods in 2015, our province's energy sector was hurting. We were going through very difficult times. More than 50,000 well-paying middle-class jobs, mainly in the energy sector, were lost in 2015. Thousands more were lost in 2016 and in 2017. We felt its impact on our communities. We saw its effect on our families, our friends, and our neighbors. And then, just when it seemed the worst might be over, we started to see the economic recovery. Our energy sector faced another challenge, the unprecedented price differential on our crude oil. It started when 900,000 barrels in the U.S. refining capacity was temporarily lost due to maintenance work at 4 refineries in the American Midwest. And that happened as new projects continued to come online in the oil sands without the pipeline capacity necessary to export the increased production. As this hit, we promised that our government and Canadians would be there to help in any and every way possible, because we understand when Alberta hurts, so does Canada. And I said that with confidence because of our government's track record. How we had moved quickly in 2016 with an immediate $250 million to offset the impact of low oil prices, as well as $1 billion to support small and medium-sized businesses through Business Development Canada and ATB Financial, and a further $1.3 billion to expand EI insurance benefits to laid-off workers in the energy sector. And we kept investing in Alberta, in both in the short term and the long term, with everything from $30 million to clean up the orphaned wells to $1.6 billion in jobs training, more than $5 billion through the Canada Child Benefit to help low-income and middle-income families, and an unprecedented $8.5 billion in combined infrastructure investments to strengthen the economy for the 21st century. There's 3 times more funding in the last 3 years than was done by the previous government over 5 years. But let me stop here to make one thing very clear. While all these investments are important, we understand that for the long-term success, and growth of the oil sector, nothing is more important than building the pipeline capacity to expand our non-US global markets. We approved Enbridge Line 3 in 2016, which is now under construction and will be in operation next year, adding 370,000 barrels per day in new capacity. We have always supported Keystone XL pipeline, and why I continue to work with US officials to ensure it succeeds. But nothing has demonstrated our government's support for the energy sector more than our decision to purchase the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion, a $4.5 billion investment in our province's future and in our country's future. Today, we are building on that track record by announcing more than $1.6 billion in supports for the long-term strength of Canada's energy sector, as well as the well-paying jobs and much-needed revenue it provides to all of Canada. These new supports are comprehensive in scope and focused in application. And that reflects our careful consideration of where we can provide the most benefit to complement Alberta's own efforts. First, Export Development Canada will make available approximately $1 billion in new commercial financing initiatives to exporters of all sizes in the oil and gas sector. This funding will assist companies looking to make capital investments in innovative technologies, address working capital challenges they may face, and diversify with confidence into new markets. At the same time, the Business Development Bank of Canada will be providing $500 million in new commercial financing over the next 2 years to help viable small oil and gas businesses deal with the current challenges. This new funding will also support efforts to expand into new markets, increase operational and environmental efficiency, and purchase new technology and equipment. Today's announcement also includes a total of $50 million through my department's Clean Growth Program to support oil and gas projects, which will leverage an estimated $890 million in new investments. Today's announcement also includes another $100 million through our government strategic infrastructure fund for energy and economic diversification related projects in Alberta. I also want to highlight that investments from our government's National Trade Corridors Fund are also available for projects that address bottlenecks in the freight rail system to support the efficient and fluid transportation of all commodities. Finally, our government is ensuring that existing federal services and programs are readily available to the workers in the oil and gas sector if they ever need them. This includes everything from immediate income support measures to more long-term jobs and skills training needs, such as employment counseling, skills assessment, and work sharing. All of this reflects our commitment to energy workers and the important role the energy sector plays in our national economy. Together, we can build a stronger Alberta, a more prosperous Canada, and a brighter tomorrow for all. Thank you.
Minister Sohi and Minister Carr will now take questions, first starting from the floor here in Edmonton, and then we will go to the moderator for national calls. So who would like to go first here in Edmonton? Here.
Yeah, g'day. I'm Ray with the Edmonton Journal. So how exactly does this help Alberta actually get value for our resources?
So first of all, the issues related to price differential are not new. They have existed for decades. The long-term solution to deal with that situation is absolutely building more pipeline capacity. I mentioned 3 projects that we are currently working on, but this investment from the Business Development Bank of Canada, as well the EDC and BDC, allows companies to export and diversify their markets and provides them financing in case that financing is not available through regular banking. I'm going to ask Jim to further elaborate on the approach of the BDC in this.
Well, the availability of capital at a tough time is essential for the long-term viability of businesses, and particularly in the oil and gas sector. So this combination of $1 billion available through the EDC and 500 available through the BDC is significant at a time when companies will need it. And this capital can be used to augment their relationship with their commercial banks, which is very important, but it's more access for them than they would have without it. And it can be used to invest in new equipment. It can be used to expand into other export markets. All in all, it has to do with liquidity. It adds to their liquidity, and as a result of that, will go a long way in helping them get through this tough spot. Yes, $1 billion through the EDC and 500. Well, this is a question of how we help the industry get through a tough time. The minister has indicated already several measures that we have taken on the question of market access.
Just to elaborate on, sorry, on your last answer there, can oil companies then, will they apply for this money? Is that how it goes out? And so can they use it for HR costs, staff?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so some of this funding is available to deal with the cash flow issues, whether it's related to human resources costs or lending cost, or this funding can also be used for, getting through issues where they might have capital challenges that they are facing in the current economic situation that a lot of small, particularly small and medium-sized oil and gas companies are facing.
Just to follow up, so it was $1 billion in basically here's money, and $500 million in loans. If I'm an oil company, why would I want to take a loan if I can just get $1 million?
It's not free money.
It's a commercial financing that is available for companies. As you can appreciate, in the economic difficulties that companies face, that they cannot go to the bank to borrow, or banks need, as Minister Carr has mentioned, a backstop, and this funding will allows companies to survive through difficult times when their cash flows are short, or the loans are difficult to gain.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah. The difficult time that Alberta is facing is obviously being reflected in the demonstration and rallies that are being held throughout the province. My focus is to solve the problem, and we're solving that problem by moving forward on the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion in the right way, undertaking the consultation that is necessary with Indigenous communities to meet our constitutional obligations, making sure that environmental science and issues around marine shipping and marine safety are taken into account by the National Energy Board. I have been busy building my relationship with the Indigenous communities. I have met with close to 40 First Nations leaders since the decision of August 30th on Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. We will continue to make every effort to make sure that our non-U.S. market is expanded at the same time that we are building the pipelines that allows us to continue to expand our U.S. markets at the same time. I'm sorry? As I said, I don't have any plans at this time, because I am focused on finding solutions, at the same time understanding people's frustration that they are expressing, and we will continue to work with Albertans as we have done in the past. Our focus is to make sure that Alberta's oil and gas sector remains a source of well-paying jobs for middle-class Canadians. As I said earlier, no community in the province or any province that has not been touched by the prosperity of the energy sector or the growth or the work in the natural resources sector. It is a very, very important sector for us, and we will continue to make sure that it remains so and continues to grow.
Thank you, Edmonton. We'll go to the national moderator now. David, we'll cycle back to you after.
Can you speak up, Josh?
That's better. That's better. Thanks,
Yeah,
Josh.
go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question about $150 million in direct government funding. It sounds like that's earmarked for projects that have been decided already or not?
The $50 million that is coming from my department out of the Clean Growth Fund is a funding that is available, and we encourage companies to apply for. There are few projects that are under review now, and the $100 million coming out of the strategic investment fund out of the ISAD is also a new funding. There are proposals that we have received, and we will be evaluating those proposals to make sure that we are investing this money into Alberta's economy as quickly as possible.
And secondly, do you know whether there are particular companies that you think will make use of the EDC or BDC funding, or the ones that
We have not selected any projects or any companies at this time, but we encourage everyone who is interested in these two programs to apply for this funding.
Thank you. Lindsay. Our next question is from Rod Nichols with Warriors News. Please go ahead, Amarjeet.
Hi, Minister. Just a clarification question firstly, that $1 billion in financial support and the $500 million pool as well, that's those are repayable loans, I take it?
Yeah. Yes, they're repayable loans at commercial rates through ADC and BDC. Similar loans have been made available for quite some time, including in the oil and gas sector, but because of the difficult moment, we are expanding the capacity of those agencies to grant these loans, and they will be available for a period of 3 years. They'll be available to firms of any size, and it's to meet the liquidity issue at a time when they may have difficulty accessing capital. This will augment the possibility of them doing that right across the entire spectrum within the oil and gas sector and others.
Okay. Secondly, it wasn't always this hard to get pipelines built in Canada, but both your government and the last Conservative government have struggled. But why has federal governments, including yours, miscalculated so badly on what it takes to get pipelines built in Canada?
The pipelines have always been controversial. It is very unfortunate that Canadians are polarized on such vital piece of infrastructure that is so necessary for us to grow our economy and create jobs. Unfortunately, the changes that previous government made in 2012, gutting the environmental protection of water, environmental protection of fish, and excluding Canadians from participation in the review, limiting the participation of Indigenous communities in the process, and not taking action on climate change has further polarized the opposition to the pipelines. It is our fundamental responsibility, and we take that very seriously, that we depoliticize this process, that we bring Canadians together, that we pull Canadians together by taking action on climate change, by having a meaningful process in place that allows Canadians and Indigenous communities to participate in the review process. That is why Bill C-69 is so fundamentally important. I understand there's opposition and there are concerns, and we will deal with those concerns. But we need to fix the broken system that we have now, because we want to make sure that we are able to build the pipeline capacity that is so necessary for our natural resources, particularly oil and gas sector, to continue to grow.
Thank you very much, National. Oh, any other questions, National Moderator?
We have another question from Jeffrey Morgan with the Financial Post. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for taking my question. Mr. Sohi, related to the money for diversification of gas, is any of this money potentially going towards the petrochemical project that we have in Alberta, of course, the Alberta government has put forward some support for
I am aware of the support that province has made available for petrochemical industries. We will continue to work with the petrochemical industry as well, and this funding can be available for those projects.
Okay, so doesn't sound like you're ruling that out. Wanted to ask as well whether or not what the timeline is for making these funds available. These companies are struggling right now. When, if they were to apply today or tomorrow, when would they be able to receive either the loan or the commercial support?
These funds are available as we speak. And the programs, the new funding is also available as of today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merci. Our next question is from Sean McCarthy with Boissonnault. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Minister Sohi, you mentioned C-69 and that there are a lot of concerns in Alberta about it, and that you're prepared to deal with those concerns. Can you indicate to us whether the government is prepared to accept amendments as it goes to committee in the Senate?
As you know, the Senate has given the go-ahead to get this bill in front of the committee through this passage of the second reading. We have made very clear to the province of Alberta and some of the other critics who have raised the issues around whether this bill will intrude into the provincial areas of responsibility. We are very clear this legislation will focus only on the federal area of responsibility. We have also been very clear that Bill C-69 does not consider or factor in downstream emissions from the oil sands as part of the review. We have also been very clear that as long as province of Alberta has a hard cap on the emissions from the oil sands, and that hard cap is legislated and is compliance with the Pan-Canadian Framework on Climate Change, in situ projects will not be on the project list. We will continue to work with stakeholders, with industry, with provinces to look at if there are other possible amendments that Senate may propose, and we will be open to those.
And secondly, with regards to EDC funding, the government, as I understand it, or the EDC and the government together are reviewing the commitment by Canada under the G20 to eliminate subsidies for fossil fuel industry. So how does this line up with the commitment that the government has made over and over again that it will eliminate subsidies for the
So the funding that's being provided through EDC and BDC are not a subsidy for fossil fuels. These are commercial loans made available on commercial terms. We have committed to phasing out the inefficient fossil fuel subsidies by 2025, and we stand by that commitment.
Thank you. Merci. Our next question is from Amarjeet Sohi with the CBC Edmonton National. Please go ahead.
We can't hear the question.
No.
No.
Your volume is too low. I'm very sorry.
Mel, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello? Okay, Minister, I'm just wondering how much of this is new money versus money that previously been allocated to others?
What the two grant funding of $50 million from NRCan and $100 million from Strategic Investment Fund, the $100 million was allocated in the fall economic statement, new funding to the strategic fund, and the $50 million is available for new projects that is available from my department.
Okay, and if I can ask you one more question. When our colleague interviewed the Prime Minister, he said that Alberta would consider putting money towards rail cars, and that's what Alberta wanted, and it's pretty clear that that is what Alberta wanted. When we see you guys going that way, why not?
I have given instructions to the National Energy Board to undertake a study of the existing pipeline capacity to see if we can optimize the existing pipeline capacity until we get the Enbridge Line 3 in operation as we move forward on building new pipelines. That study will be concluded in February, and I am waiting for that to be concluded. We are working with the province of Alberta, evaluating their rail proposal. Our officials are working with the provincial officials, and we will continue to work with them, and we will be in a better position to respond to that proposal as we continue to evaluate the business case that has been back and forth information that we are gathering from the province.
Thank you. Nancy. Our next question is from Rick Bell with Calgary Sun. Please go ahead with our witness.
Minister Sohi, you say that you understand the frustration expressed at these numerous pipeline rallies, but what is your reaction to the fact that most of the anger that's expressed at these rallies are directed towards your government and what you have not done for the oil patch?
Well, while we understand the frustration, and we will continue to make sure that we are dealing with people's real anxieties about not having a job or potential of losing a job. These investments that we are making today will ensure that businesses continue to thrive. They continue to meet with challenges that they're facing. So these investments will not only retain the existing jobs in those sectors, but they will also grow the jobs in the energy sector. I also want to highlight that since taking office in 2015, we saw a lot of jobs lost in the energy sector, but we also saw more than 110,000 new jobs created in Alberta, including 71,000 net new jobs factoring into job losses. So, and even in the month of October, more than 36,000 new jobs were created in Alberta. We are working in supporting every sector of Alberta's economy, including the oil and gas. I understand the frustration. That frustration grows because of the pipeline capacity that is not there to get our resources to U.S. and non-U.S. markets. But the blame lies clearly at the feet of the conservative government because they failed to take action on protecting the climate, on protecting water, on protecting fish, or not allowing Canadians to participate in the process. That is what we're trying to correct. We want to put in a place that allows good projects to move forward quickly and allows our economy and our resources sector to continue to grow.
Yes, but still, what is the reaction? The protesters that are out there are not protesting the former government that is not in power. They're protesting you. They have the name of the Prime Minister on the side. They have the name of the government on the side. What do you say to them about their frustration, not just with the pipeline, but their frustration with your government?
What I will say to them is that we absolutely understand the difficult time that they, their families, and their neighbors and friends are going through. I am Albertan. I have lived here for 34 years. I know people who are struggling. But that doesn't mean that we blame one government or we target one specific segment of the of Canadian governments. The lack of ability to build the pipelines in Canada is something that we're trying to fix. It is not a new problem. This problem has existed under the previous government. That's why they failed to build a single pipeline to get our resources to non-U.S. market. We have only one customer, which is the U.S. 99% of Alberta's oil is sold to the United States. When Harper government came in power in 2006, that was the case. When they left office in 2015, again, 99% of the oil was sold to the U.S., who's becoming our competitor. We need to change that situation, and we will work hard to change that situation.
Thank you, National Moderator. Last question here in Edmonton, David Staples.
It's a three-pronged question.
You get one question.
About Indigenous consultations, because I think everyone agrees that's a big key to this.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Carr, you were in charge of the PNX file when consultation, when we were about the court that it wasn't adequate. What do you think, first of all, what do you think went wrong there? Secondly, Calvin Hallen was talking about this Even Spear project. He was saying that the First Nations were not adequately consulted on the Northwest Interbank for C-48, and they don't want that ban in place. So what would be your reaction to that? And thirdly, there's a lot of concern about Hundred, and it moves from consultation of Indigenous groups to consent from Indigenous groups. So what is do you have that concern that it moves the line from consent, from consultation to consent, and what we've done to it right now? So
Yeah.
what is your part on that?
We didn't satisfy the Federal Court of Appeal. We increased significantly consultation and also what we believe to be meaningful accommodation. This is in response to the Federal Court of Appeal's decision in the Northern Gateway case, where the consultation was deemed inadequate. So we posed the question, what would more adequate consultation and accommodation be? And we worked very hard at satisfying what we believed to be a sufficient level. The court said it wasn't a sufficient level. So now in the consultations that Minister Sohi can speak to, we are determined to do it right, because we know that this is an essential element of getting approval to move major infrastructure projects in Canada. So we will learn, and I'm confident that we will show to Canadians that the accommodation and the consultation was sufficient, as it must be. We have constitutional obligations in this country to do it right, and we're determined to get it right.
David, if I can just add to that, the interim principles that we put in place related to pipeline approval were actually acknowledged and recognized by the Federal Court of Appeal as the right steps that we have taken to improve the old process. As Minister Carr has mentioned, where we fell short was in a meaningful dialogue with Indigenous communities, which we are undertaking now, and we are already working, our officials are on the ground engaging with Indigenous peoples. On the tanker issue, there has been a moratorium on crude oil tanker traffic on the northwest coast of British Columbia since 1985. So this is not something new, right? What we are doing is formalizing that tanker traffic, a tanker moratorium, because the infrastructure doesn't exist to deal with the possible spills, and also the lack of a response that or amount of time that it would take to, and those were the reasons that the moratorium was actually put in place in 1985. On the UNDRIP, it is our understanding, and we're very confident that, as we always say, that no relationship is more important to our government than the relationship with Indigenous peoples. And we have obligations for meaningful consultation. We have obligations to make sure that they're included, their voices are included. But that does not mean that UNDRIP gives a veto to any group to stop any project. That is not the case. We are very confident that if we actually allow more participation of Indigenous voices in the decision making, we will get to the right position to get these projects built. We will not cut corners, because by cutting corners, we have seen the consequences that workers are facing today in Alberta. The Northern Gateway Pipeline was overturned by the Federal Court of Appeal because previous government cut corners on consultation. We were held responsible as a government for not doing good enough job on the consultation with Indigenous communities, and the exclusion of marine shipping and the impact of that on the coastal communities that was done in 2012 or 2014, again fell short. We need to get this right. That is my focus. If we do not get this right, we will continue to fail Alberta, and we will continue to fail Alberta's workers. That is why Bill C-69 is important. That is why meaningful consultation is important. It is our fundamental responsibility as a government that our economy continues to grow, that jobs are created in the energy sector, in the oil and gas sector, but we also need to make sure that we take meaningful action on climate change, that we allow Canadians to participate in the regulatory process.
So when under talks about prior informed consent, that strikes me very, very clear, because it's saying all these groups must consent to a project before it can proceed. Do you not see it that way?
That is not what the meaning of that is. What it means that governments have to make sincere and meaningful efforts to engage Indigenous communities earlier on in the process, and try to build consensus and try to seek consent. And if there's no consent, that does not mean that any group has a veto over any project.
Thank you all very much. Have a great day. Cheers.
Yeah.
Thanks, Minister.
Thank you, buddy.
Oui, je vais faire midi francophone. Ils sont ici.